Hello everyone. When I knew that I was coming up to Scotland, I put a little call out on the channel to see if anybody in the area had a car that they would like me to review. And there was one that I simply couldn't refuse. It's this, Julian's 2002 Vauxhall Astra SXi. Now, Julian's a man who doesn't necessarily need a car in his life. He's lived in many different cities at many points in time, and this car is basically a cheaper alternative to renting. So if he wants to go out into the countryside for a walk or take something to the tip, that kind of thing. It's a very interesting example, and if you're of a certain age or older, sort of, my age or older, you'll probably remember this kind of car with a real fondness. You see, once upon a time, when people were getting their first cars, they did not go down to the dealership and sign on the dotted line for a brand spanking new vehicle on finance. Instead, you would go to Dodgy Dave's discount house of cars and you would pick up a gleaming example of something along the lines of this for about $1,000 or $2. You'd probably then go straight to Halfords and you'd spend another $1,000 on a stupid stereo with a fold-out screen, possibly some distasteful wheels and a couple of other very unsensible extras. And so it's very sad to see so few of these cars remaining. Although in many ways they are quite unremarkable, there's actually a lot to be said for them. This one is on 93,000 miles, and it's had something of a hard life. It is actually only a 2-owner car. As you'd expect, there's quite a bit in here which doesn't work, including the AC, but it's sort of like, a faithful old family dog. This car just keeps going and refuses to give up. Let me give you some of the highlights. It has a sporty 1.6 litre Ecotec engine, producing allegedly 98 horsepower. However, in the previous 17 years, it is very possible that a few of them may have escaped. Various parts of the car are held together with sellotape, including the rear light and, most impressively, the spoiler, which has a very improvised construction, including some broken cassette boxes as splints to hold it in place. I admire that kind of craftsmanship. The dials are a very sexy and racy white, echoing the Audi R8 GT that I drove a week ago. In truth, by the way, I know little to nothing about trim levels of early 2000s Vauxhalls. I've really never been interested in them whatsoever. You also have this towel on the dash. This is a functional towel. A towel is there because in anything other than sort of mild sunshine, the dash is so reflective you cannot see where you're going. Now, in spirited driving situations, this means that you do need to have one hand on the steering wheel and one hand on the towel. The car will not rev beyond about 3,500 RPM for unknown reasons, but that's fine because 3,500 RPM in top gear is 70 mile an hour, and I cannot conceive of any reason why you'd want to go beyond 70 anyway. It's actually a kind of familiar cabin in here because my grandmother for a very long time has owned a Vauxhall Astra van, and it's largely the same in here. There's not a lot of power. I think there's a chance that the clutch is slipping. The biting point is very high, and it also misses quite a bit. The car is serviced strictly on a when it's broken it gets replaced schedule. However, impressively, the car actually flew through its last MOT with simply a couple of bulbs needing replacing. The car's been owned for coming up to 3 years now. It is sort of struggling to get up this hill, gotta be said. It's not liking this. But it's never really let its owner down in any meaningful way. It has cost some money to be maintained, including a bit of welding and some work done to the side to fix some previously badly done stuff. So I'm told that this kind of performance is basically to be expected for this car. But in truth, it's still moving. It's still keeping us going. We'd be dry if it were raining, but it's not, so I'm thankful for that, with it being Scotland and all. However, this car impressively did get all the way to Grenoble last year, which is a pretty big trip even from where I live, and it's a massive trip from up here in Scotland. And it did so without incident. Now, the thing about a car like this is there's a true excitement of ownership. the excitement of ownership, perhaps not dissimilarly to my own Mercedes S-Class, is you've got this whole, how much of a repair bill do I need to just scrap the car? You got to work it out. The car itself only cost about £550 a few years ago, and although they love it dearly, they don't really love it that much. And so things like the clutch could mean that this is perhaps the car's final hurrah. However, now it's up to speed. It's misfiring less than it was earlier, and it's moving us down the road well. It actually handles quite nicely, to be fair. The suspension's pretty decent, and the steering's actually lovely. It responds really well. And bearing in mind that today I've driven an Esprit, an Elise, and all sorts of things down this road, it's actually doing quite well. I'm also gaining on this Fiat 500L, and whoever's in that needs to hang their head in shame, because I'm limping along in a dying Vauxhall Astra SXi 1.6, and I haven't got the go to get past them. I'm stuck. I cannot do anything about it, but the fact that I was gaining on them is shameful. Hand in your driving license now. I mean, for a start, you bought a Fiat 500L, which is an abomination anyway. I mean, I got no love for most of the Fiat lineup, or the current Fiat lineup anyway, but the 500L is just like, why? There's a joy about this kind of car as well, especially when you buy one as a young car enthusiast, because it will certainly break, it will need things done to it, and that means that you learn. This is an educational tool, not just a car, you see. You get to know about what things mean, you know, what does it mean when your power steering fails? What does it mean when your brake discs are going? What does it mean when your air filter's all clogged up and nasty? The car itself, however, is pretty decent. I'm told that many mechanics that have looked at it have remarked upon the fact that it's actually in remarkably fine fettle. Now, that could be that the exterior builds such ridiculously low expectations that the fact that there is an underbody beneath this beautiful silver shell is simply miraculous. However, I can actually well believe that it's genuinely pretty good under there. One day, perhaps, we'll look back and miss things like this. Maybe not exactly like this, but it has happened before. You only need to look at silly stuff like the Ford Capri. At one point in time, a car you pretty much threw away, and then suddenly people get all nostalgic and they go, oh, do you remember them? Like, oh, the miles I did in that. And I've had some great times in dirt cheap cars, and over the last few years, for various reasons, it's become harder and harder to find cheap cars that are still actually all right. And so this generation of Astra, if you're on the hunt for dirt cheap motoring, perhaps you're taking part in some sort of cheap car challenge, that kind of thing, or you just want an old beater to take to the tip, you don't care what gets poured in the back, and you don't care how people treat it. You know, maybe a child is learning to drive and you know they're going to be really bad at it, so you want to buy them something that if they put a dent in the side of it, you're going to go, oh well, glad you didn't do that to a proper car. Got a lot of charm in it. It is the sort of thing that if it was working properly, I actually would be having a decent amount of fun hacking it down this road. As it is, it's a fairly new modern car. It's actually ruining my fun. The Astra isn't getting in the way of proceedings at all. And having such little power means that you do start to get a bit silly with it, and you start to coast through the corners as quickly as you can, you ride the suspension, you brake as late as you can, and you're not carrying silly speeds whatsoever, but you're just enjoying yourself. I mean, this is the kind of thing that I've been trying to demonstrate on the channel over the last few years, and particularly in the last month, that you do not have to spend a huge amount of money to have driving enjoyment. Now, you might want to spend a little bit more money on this, because you probably do want something that works a little bit more. And on a motorway, in this current condition, this car probably would be utterly terrifying. However, I still like it. I'd still have one of these over one of those. 100%. That is, look, there's some cars you buy because you don't really care about cars. That's what this is. There's some cars you buy because you hate yourself. That's what that is. There's a big difference, just for your information out there. However, the lovely little mighty Astra SXi gets a thumbs up from me. It's fun. It's broken, but it's fun. Oh, I do love it.